talk us through what you were experiencing before we met that led you to working together?
Sure. I think I was in a particular relationship, but it had been a string of relationships like that my entire life. And this particular one had sort of taken me to the brink of like thinking that I needed help to get out of it or to get out of that pattern dynamic. And so I saw you on Instagram, some of your posts, and they resonated with me. So that's why I reached out. I was actually feeling like I couldn't fully get out. I could get out of the relationship, but I couldn't get out of my head about it without help. And yeah.
What is it specifically that made you feel like you couldn't get out of both your head and the relationship? Like what made it?
Mm, I think I kept questioning myself about if I was doing the right thing or if it was me or if I changed, if I just did something different, maybe it could work or maybe we could figure it out. Because I think that's usually the case with a healthy relationship. You think if you can just make a couple shifts or you can change something about you or something that you're doing, then maybe the other person can shift, which I think is true for a lot of relationships, but not these types of relationships. I think the only solution is to get out or to get out and then heal to the point where you don't attract or don't get into that same dynamic.
What was it that you learned about your own tendencies and working through those tendencies that
Mm,
made you realize
I
this?
learned um that I was probably just a bit codependent in the way I was relating and um, sort of like it was not that it was my fault, not that it was my fault, but it was like I was also playing into the dynamic of the relationship. So I was very used to like taking the blame and kind of being gaslit into thinking that the things that I were doing were causing his behavior or if I could just change the things that I was doing, then he wouldn't react the way that he was reacting. Like there was something innately wrong or something that I was doing that was causing that or triggering that dynamic. And so I think I was just very easy to take, like a peacemaker, always wanting to smooth things over, always wanting, being conflict averse, wanting everyone to be peaceful and thinking it was my responsibility to make everyone happy.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's true. Like you've come so far from that point, and I'm just curious as to whenever you decided to take that leap, what was it specifically that drew you towards my work or the program that I run?
I think there's a lot of, I mean, I went through a whole phase of researching that personality type, and I think you can get really bogged down. I mean, I think it is helpful for a little bit because you start to make sense of what's happening or what has happened to you. And so you start to understand, okay, it's not me, it's them, it's them, it's them, it's them. And then there's a lot of that, like it's them, it's them, it's them. But I felt like your work specifically put responsibility on me in a good way, like in an empowering way. Like if you can change this, if you can heal this dynamic within yourself, then you can stop being attracted to that then you can understand that that's unhealthy. Whereas a lot of like the stuff on narcissism or on all that personality disorder types is like it's them, they're evil and they're this and they're that, and it's like freeing because you're like I can finally make sense of what's been happening to me, but there's really no, it's sort of victimizing in a way.
I know
So
what you mean. It is helpful to obviously be aware of those behaviors, right? Narcissistic behaviors, to recognize
mhm,
them, like to educate
mhm.
ourselves about them, because how are we to know if we don't educate ourselves about it? And how do we know what to look out for? But in the end, it's the difference between recognizing it and accepting it, right?
Mhm.
Because even if you might be able to recognize it, it doesn't mean that you're going to listen to the red flags and set those boundaries and not accept it into your life. And that's where codependency plays in. I mean, yes, there
Right.
are manipulative behaviors in it, and I think we have to hand that responsibility over to those people
Mhm.
because they are very good at manipulating, but at the same time, it's important to recognize, okay, what is keeping me in these cycles of jumping in every time I see the, the love bombing and all of that,
Mhm.
keeping me in this cycle. And
Correct.
you
Yeah.
did a great job at taking responsibility for your part because that's where healing starts, right? It's recognizing those patterns within ourselves.
Right. And then I think you can finally start to move on when you're stuck in the research phase and the sort of figuring them out. It's like you get stuck in this, it provides you with a relief in a way, but then it's just you get kind of stuck in that cycle of like, okay, I'm going to go back in my head and think it's my fault. And then I'm going to Google this and then I'm going to read about it and then I'm going to realize it's not my fault. And then I'm just going to go right back to thinking it's like a cycle of self-torture and release and self-torture, and I've seen people get stuck in that for years where they're just in that research phase of figuring the other person out.
Right. And yeah, you're right in that it's validating, right? To
Yeah,
see,
it is
oh my God,
validating.
there is a reason to this madness.
Hmm.
Then,
Hmm.
but then you keep circling back into trying to validate yourself again and again. And although validation is an important part of healing, it's not the whole, it's not all we need. And
Correct. Yeah.
if we keep just validating and over validating the situation, then it doesn't really get us moving forwards. It just keeps us circling. Right?
Yeah.
What was your biggest concern to jumping into this work together? If you're to put your finger on it, did you have any concerns or worries about joining at the
I don't
time?
know if I had any concerns or worries. I think I was feeling so lost that I didn't know if it would work. I didn't know if it would work. I was sort of like, I don't know if I can really change what I'm ultimately seem to be attracted to. So I was sort of like, I got it logically, like that I don't want to be in these types of relationships, but it felt like such a part of my like makeup that I wasn't sure that it would work, but I was willing to try.
How did you overcome that?
I might think just day by day, just really truly day by day, like giving it, talking to you and like just taking it day by day and saying, well, I don't know, it doesn't feel that way today, but maybe it will tomorrow. And eventually started, slowly but surely to feel like I was coming out of the fog or like unlocking that part that could sort of see the light and then just kept moving that way. And now I know that I will never get in a dynamic like that again. Like I'm not scared of that at all.
How would you describe that process of getting to this point of going from I thought it was maybe part of my makeup and I thought, well, it's not, might not just not be possible for me to being like, I know it's never going to happen again. I have that certainty. Like, how would you describe that? Was it a gradual thing or was there like a moment where it clicked or?
I would say it was gradual. I would say it was gradual. There was moments of it clicking. And then I think like any type of growth, it's like you take one step forward and then you take two steps back. And then, there were times where it felt like, oh, I'm not getting this at all. But I think part of why it worked for me is I was so done with it. Like I had really come to the point, and I think that's probably true for most people that you're not done until you're done. And I had done the research on those relationships, a lot of research, and in terms of like going through it and living it. And so I just think at some point you're done. And unfortunately, I think with these types of things, it does take someone to lead you through it because there's some things in life where you're like, okay, like for instance, with drinking or something, you might say, okay, I'm just done with that. I don't like how I feel. I'm going to stop doing that. But there's something about this type of dynamic that really enmeshes you in things that it's like, it's almost harder. I think it's hard to get out without someone like like validating you or like helping you or someone that's been through it.
What was it about that that you felt like the guidance really served you, like the personal guidance really served you?
I think it's because because you've been through it. And so I don't think someone that it's hard to like, I think I have like a therapist, like a therapist, and she's great, but I don't believe that she's ever been in she knows about it, she's read about it, she knows what narcissism is. But if you haven't personally been in it, I think it's hard to explain it to somebody. And so it's hard for someone who hasn't been in it to like talk to you about it or like lead you through it. Like I have a lot of friends that have been in the relationship, so I can talk to them about it and they can understand the crazy making and the craziness. If you're just talking to someone off the street that's read about it in a textbook, they don't really get, I've talked to people about it since the relationship and they're like, wow, that's crazy. That sounds wild. Like they can't really understand what it's like to be involved with that type of person.
You're totally right. And I always say I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone.
No,
But at the
no.
same time, if we're turning to someone for help, we want to feel understood, like they get it or that they've overcome it, like they've rewired their own brain and changed and broke the pattern themselves, because it is a complex thing, right? It's not a black and white process, it's complex. And there are the complexities of the guilt and all of those feelings
Right.
that the fears, and like there's a lot to it. And learning how to navigate all of those complex feelings isn't straightforward. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And there's, I guess I'd heard about it before I realized I was in sort of these dynamics a lot in my life, but I don't know. It's just different living it. I guess that's with most things, right? You just don't realize I don't know. Now it's like I see gaslighting. I didn't even know what that was, and I didn't know what love bombing was. I thought that was just what happened whenever you started dating someone. And I think we are taught that, right? Like with the movies and our like all this stuff, like it's just shoved down our throat that that's how it should be. And yeah, I lost my train of thought, but I think it's just it's something you just don't know what it is until you live it. And like you said, I don't wish it on anybody, but if you're going through it right now, it's nice to know that other people have been through it and gotten out.
Yeah, I get you
Yeah.
completely. Um, so given where you were, so when we met, you were kind of in and out of that narcissistic relationship, right? You were trying to figure out if there's a way that you could make it work
Hmm.
versus where you are now of going, I know that I will never get into one again. Can you tell me a bit about like what has changed for you since then, and like how is your life right now? What are your relationships like? How are you showing up in the world differently compared to where you were at back
I
then?
mean, it's so differently. I think I think there, and maybe you can speak to this too, but I think there is something, if one of your relationships is like that, you better bet that there's a lot of those dynamics around you. And so seeing that like really made me look at my friendships and my like just seeing where people were good friends and not good friends. And one thing I learned is if someone is nice to you some of the time, and really crummy to you some of the time, they're just a crummy friend or like it's not a good relationship. And so I had a lot of those relationships where I was like, yeah, but she's really great 80% of the time. And then, 20% of the time it's bad, or like I feel like I was betrayed. And so I really like cut those out. Friendships, um, obviously romantic relationships, but so I'd say my life is a lot more peaceful and there's a lot less tension. There's a lot, it's just more calm. But I think there was a period of time where I went through where I was like, oh, this is kind of boring. Or like you kind of, if you're addicted to that drama, then it takes some time to like, I don't know, it can be lonely and it can be feel boring and it can feel like, oh, but if you like just wait that out or like get through that time period, it gets a lot better. And then you can start inviting, real friendships and dating people that are like actually looking to get to know you, not just objectifying you or, making you to be the vision of what they want you to be. And it's a lot more freeing, and authentic.
What you're describing, that transition of the loneliness, I think that's what holds a lot of people back. What would you
Yeah.
say to a person? I mean, it holds a
Yeah.
lot of people back from doing this work, right? From going through doing from overcoming these things, because we all know that our lives are going to change the moment we start to
Yeah. Yeah.
turn inwards and break these patterns. So what would you say to a person who's terrified of that loneliness and terrified of going through that transition that you were just describing?
I would say, I think we all think the safety is in the known because we think that it's like that's where we're safe, is like, even if it's not good, it's known. We know it, it's familiar. But I think the safety is actually in the unknown. So the safety is like in the something that you don't actually, because I didn't know where I was going. I didn't, that's all I knew. So if I'm going to leave these dynamics, then it's like, where am I going? What is going to happen? But that's actually where you want to be if you're in these dynamics, because even though you don't know what it's going to be, it's not going to be torture. It's not going to be someone abusing you emotionally or whatever is happening. It's like you have to trust yourself, like you learn. And I think that takes time. Like you learn, it's a beautiful process of learning to trust yourself again. And as that happens, like you gain confidence. Like I think a lot of people think, well, I just I need to have confidence. I need to have confidence in myself. But it's like it's not confidence, it's courage. With courage comes confidence, right? The
Exactly.
more like you step into that, then you start to get confidence and then you have confidence. And so once you get a little bit of confidence, you can just, okay, I remember the last time I just needed courage. And then you get, and so it just builds on itself. And then it starts to feel so good that you just keep doing that. But it is a process. It's a slow process. Like there were some dark times where you have to like, like lean on your coach or your friends or your faith or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Your routines, I think like routines really help
Mhm.
with that, those times. Um, and there are still times where I think about that relationship with rose-colored glasses. I mean, there are. And I just have to go back to like, no, like it was fake, like it wasn't real. And this is real. And um, I would much prefer something steady and calm and slow and real than that rush of the highs and lows and the all of that, all the stuff that came along with that.
I feel like you hit the nail on the head, especially when you said it's, you saw the world, or sometimes you have those moments of seeing the world through rose-tinted glasses. And
Mhm.
it's removing the glasses, and it's that the courage that it takes to remove them and say, I'm ready to look at reality now.
Reality.
So
Yeah.
many of us in the past or now choose to just keep those glasses on because it feels familiar and say it feels safer to live in an alternate reality to actual reality, right?
Mhm.
Because we don't have to face the things that are hard to face.
Right. But our body knows that it's not. That's the problem. I mean, that's one
Yeah.
of the problems. There's many problems with it, but it first of all, it always catches up and your body knows. So you're not. doing yourself any favors by keeping them on. Although it does feel, I mean, people spend lifetimes doing it, you know, it's just, I think it just depends on when you've had enough.
What was the impact on your body?
I think I was just really out of touch. You know, I'd sort of shut it down, like shut down the connection. I was just otherwise, but then, you know, it would, it always speaks, right? It always will be heard. So, you know, I wouldn't be sleeping well, or I'd have anxiety when I wouldn't normally, or like it just keeps, and I think it just gets louder and louder until you're really sick or you really have something that you have to, you know, pay attention to. But I think a lot of people don't make the connection.
It's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's insomnia, gut
Yeah.
problems, right? It's like digestive
Yeah.
issues and
Digestive
serious
issues,
illness.
headaches, you know, you can't focus. One thing that I noticed, those relationships can be all consuming, and relationships shouldn't be that way, you know? And so there would be like no space for anything else. Like I couldn't be present with my kids. Like I was with my kids every other weekend and during the week, and when I was with them I was worried about him and worried about getting back to him in a certain amount of time and worried about how he was doing and what he was doing and texting, and I just wasn't present. So it's like
Mm.
that's not how it should be. You know, like a healthy relationship would be go spend time with your kids. You know, go like don't worry about me. You know, we're okay.
That's what enmeshments do, right? So
Yeah.
how would you describe like how has your relationship with your kids changed? How is it different now?
So I mean, they know I'm just more present with them when I'm home, you know, when they're here. Like I'm just able to be with them and really listen to them and talk to them. And before I was just going through the motions, but I wasn't really there because I was worried about ding dong, you know? Which is like shouldn't be. I mean, I get there is a part of it just shouldn't be that way. A healthy relationship isn't that way. If anything, it adds to your other parts of your life and makes those more juicy and richer. It shouldn't take away from those parts. And you should never feel like um, your life is being consumed by someone or that you don't have permission to do things outside of the relationship. I would feel guilty for hanging out with friends or things like that.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're meant to be adding to each other's lives and both going on the
Yeah.
journey of life together alongside each other rather than filling a void for each other and becoming
Exactly.
meshed. Yeah. What
Exactly.
what a gift to your family. I've got to say, I'm so glad to hear that you're able to be more present with your kids. Like they deserve that, you deserve that, and it's
For sure.
gonna
Yeah.
close in your bond, especially at the age that they're at right now.
Correct. Yeah.
Crucial
And,
age.
you know, my daughter is starting, she's in high school now, so she's starting to, you know, be interested in dating. And so it'll be an interesting thing that I can teach her, you know, like what's normal and what's not. And I feel like it's interesting because I see the ways people gaslight, even when they're not intentionally. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if it's intentional or not intentional, but just ways that even like certain friends will say stuff to me and I'm like, gosh, stop gaslighting me. Like, I know, you know, and I don't know. It's like something that once you learn, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you see it everywhere.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
saw I saw a podcast recently with Dr. Ramani,
Mhm.
and it was just one of those like snippets. And it was like, she was asking someone like, what is a definitive sign of childhood trauma? And he said, um, trying to get a difficult person to love us or to treat us well. And I was like, that is so perfect. Like, it is. That's what it is. Like trying to get difficult people, whether they're narcissists or whatever they are, toxic, or just take the name out. Like, like performing and trying to just get this person to treat you well instead of saying, I'm good. I can see that you're unable to treat me well. So I'm going to go over here.
It's that attempt to work hard for the love, right?
Yeah.
Earn the
Yeah.
love because you don't feel deserving enough of it. So you think you have to work
Right.
hard for it. And then also you believe that love is conditional, that you have to work, do something in order to get it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It helped me to realize that it helped me to take like someone like I have a friend that just like I can tell just has like really strong boundaries and just it just comes so easy to her to think like not everyone operates this way. So there are people out there that just say when someone starts acting funny or not treating them well, they just leave. You know, they just say, thank you very much for your time. Have a nice life. And if you can think that some people can do that, and we all have the human brain, you can do that too. You can get to the point where you can be that person. Even though it might not come as naturally, there are people in the world that behave like that. So it always helped me to think there are some people that would just at the very first sign of this would just say, no, thank you. And I can be that person.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's so true. People who
Yeah.
have secure childhoods do,
Yeah.
learn boundaries very young. They learn
Yeah.
that you expect your boundaries to be respected and you respect other people's boundaries.
Yeah.
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 Anyone can learn it now, even if they didn't learn it in childhood. It's never too.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And also there are a lot of highly compassionate people, highly empathetic people who are like that, right? It's not a sign of being selfish or narcissistic because you're boundaried. You can look at those people and they're just secure in knowing who they are and what they need and want and what they don't. But
Right.
they're still kind to other people.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a mean thing or like a cruel thing. It's actually, yeah, I agree.
What surprised you the most about the process of working together?
Um, I don't know if anything, I don't know if there's anything that surprised me. I think if anything, like how maybe how well it worked or like how quickly it like felt like I mean it felt long and quick at the same time, but it really wasn't that long. I mean, it was how long? 9 months? Like it
Six,
wasn't that long.
6 months, yeah.
6 months. Yeah. So um yeah, just like how different I feel from the beginning to the end. Um and I think there was an element of me just being like, I'm done with this. I don't know what I need to do, but I'm not doing this anymore.
You've
So I
got to
was
be
very
ready.
committed. Yeah,
Yeah,
you've got to be ready. Yeah.
yeah, you were committed and you were ready for
Yeah.
change, and you have to be
Yeah.
at that point if you are going to sign up to a program like this. And then,
Probably, right? You probably don't have anyone that signs up that's not that way. I mean, I don't know.
well,
Yeah.
I don't tend to, I mean, I say well, but only because I only accept to work with people who are ready for it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is what the interview process is about, the initial call process.
Yeah.
If someone shows signs that they're not ready to hold themselves accountable and do the work, then there's only so far I can go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I too have healed my codependency. So I recognize that I'm not able to save other people. I can
Yeah.
show them the way, but they have to implement it. They have to put it
Yeah.
into practice. And that's the difference, right? And you were ready. And that's the difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Who would you recommend the program to, aside someone who's ready to make it?
Yeah. Someone who's ready. I would recommend it to anyone who's been in these dynamics. I think you know who you are. If you hear us talking, like you know that you it's rarely, I think it's rarely just ever one relationship. And sometimes they can be very extreme, I think, towards the end of these dynamics, you know, like you're like the last one obviously led me to you, and that was like very extreme. That was a very extreme example. And it, you know, it lasted on and off for about 8 months. It was short and quick and like strong. But if I really look at these dynamics, they've been at play my entire life in some way or another. And so I would just say, like, if you're right, I mean, if you've been in these dynamics, like, get out, you know, like there's a way out. There's definitely a way out. But you need help. You know, you need someone who's been through it to lead you through it. Otherwise, I think it's really hard. I don't know. I think I'd probably have still ended it, but I would still feel unsure about it or in some way. You know, did I do something wrong, or should I have done this? Like, I don't know. It feels really clean and clear. Like I don't, as much as I, you know, I joke about it sometimes and I'm like, there's no one, there's, you know, I will never feel that way again about someone, and I'm so happy.
What I also notice in your process, and to be honest, most people that I work with who have been in your situation or who were trying to come out of that situation, is that you're not only trying to close that chapter, right? But you're
Yeah,
trying to start a new one and figure out, okay, how do I start something, like start this chapter in a brand new way that involves not going back into old patterns.
yeah,
We've done a lot of work not only on closing that, but also figuring out, okay, how do we actually have healthy relationships, and what does that look like in the beginnings, and what does that look like during? um
yeah.
how did you find that, like the trying to figure out, like going from, being enmeshed to what you said, going through the whole hurdle of feeling lonely and bored, into now, because I know that you're now kind of re-entering the dating scene,
Yeah,
meeting
I think
people.
it helps to have someone help you through that, because you don't necessarily know, if you've only been in these dynamics, what's healthy. And you don't want to write someone off who is healthy and really wants to get to know you, because they're not, you know, showing you like overwhelming amounts of attention and all the things that they do in the beginning. And because I think we can mistake that for that's what the love process is. You know, that's what, so I think it's helpful to like talk it through with someone and like listen to your body and like figure out what you like about them. And what I think we're so wired to, at least I was so wired to be like, oh, well, they like me and da 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 da, all the things that they like about me. That feels so great. But then, like, a healthy person is like, what do I like about them? You know? And so, it just like having someone help you through that process can be really helpful.
It really is shifting out of that dopamine addiction, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
when you're still in that addictive state, even if you're not in a relationship and you're just looking for someone, it's like you said, you get you the more someone feeds you that dopamine hit, the more you're like, oh, that's love. um,
Mm-hmm.
the more you search for it, right? It's this never ending
Mm-hmm.
cycle of reaching out for more and more of that addictive substance.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's never fulfilling. There's never enough.
Well, I'm super proud of you
Thank you.
so far, and yeah, and you're amazing, and you put in the work and it's paid off. So
Thank you very
right.
much for all your help.
Pleasure. Pleasure.
Yeah.